Most people believe that landing a good job is a financial win by default. The salary is higher, the role looks stable, and the career path feels secure. On paper, everything points in the right direction. The problem is that many of these jobs quietly introduce a lifestyle cost that never appears in the offer letter. For a large portion of workers, that hidden cost approaches $15,000 per year. This is not about obvious expenses like rent or taxes. It is about the secondary costs that attach themselves to certain jobs and then become normalized. Because these costs are spread across many categories and paid gradually, they rarely trigger concern. Individually, they look reasonable. Collectively, they change the financial outcome of the job. Most people think they are doing everything correctly. They accepted a higher salary. They upgraded their living situation to match their new level. They adjusted their routine to meet professional expectations. What they usually do not do is calculate how much this adjustment costs annually. The assumption is simple: higher income equals higher progress. That assumption is often wrong. Consider a common scenario. A professional accepts a role paying $90,000 instead of $75,000. The $15,000 increase feels decisive, but the job requires working from the office, maintaining a professional appearance, and operating on a fixed schedule. Transportation adds $5,000 to $6,000 per year. Workday food and convenience spending add another $3,000. Clothing, grooming, and appearance-related expenses add $2,000. Time pressure increases reliance on paid services. Cleaning, meal delivery, occasional childcare adding $3,000 to $4,000. The total quietly reaches the same $15,000 that justified the move. From the outside, nothing looks excessive. Each expense can be explained. None of them feel like financial mistakes. This is why the problem persists. The lifestyle shift is framed as professional, not costly. The job feels better, but the net financial position often does not improve. The issue is structural. Certain jobs impose a cost of maintenance. They require a specific location, schedule, appearance, and pace of life. These requirements create spending pressure that is not optional. Opting out often carries social or career penalties. As a result, spending increases not because of poor discipline, but because of role expectations. Over time, the impact becomes measurable. A $15,000 annual lifestyle cost is not just a reduction in savings, it is lost flexibility. It limits the ability to build reserves, invest consistently, or absorb shocks. Over 5 years, that cost equals $75,000. Over 10 years, $150,000. These numbers do not include opportunity cost or inflation. They reflect only the direct effect of maintaining the good job lifestyle. The most misleading part is perception. People feel financially responsible because they are employed, earning well, and meeting expectations. Yet they often wonder why progress feels slow. The answer is not a lack of effort, it is that the job itself is consuming the margin. At this stage, the goal is not to reject ambition or career growth. It is to recognize that income and lifestyle are not independent variables. Until the full cost of maintaining a role is understood, many people will continue to trade higher pay for equal or lower net outcomes without realizing where the money went. To understand why the $15,000 lifestyle cost appears so consistently in good jobs, it is necessary to look at how income, expectations, and behavior interact. The issue is not overspending in the traditional sense. It is the way certain roles redefine what is considered normal spending. Income is received in fixed intervals, monthly or bi-weekly, while lifestyle costs adjust continuously. When a job changes, expenses do not increase in one visible jump. They layer in gradually. A slightly better apartment to be closer to work. More frequent meals outside the home because time is limited. Occasional paid services to compensate for fatigue or schedule rigidity. None of these decisions are framed as lifestyle inflation. They are framed as necessities. Behavior reinforces this shift. Once a role is labeled as professional or career-defining, spending aligned with that role becomes justified. The psychological anchor moves from personal preference to external expectation. Clothing is not purchased because it is wanted, but because it is appropriate. Transportation choices are not evaluated on cost, but on reliability and image. Time saving expenses are rationalized as productivity tools. Over time, these choices stop feeling optional. A concrete example illustrates this dynamic. Consider an individual moving from a flexible role earning $70,000 to a more traditional office based role earning $85,000. The salary increase appears meaningful. However, the new job requires daily commuting, fixed hours, and regular in person presence. The person relocates closer to the office, increasing rent by $400 per month or $4,800 per year. Commuting adds $5,000 annually. Professional clothing, grooming, and related expenses add $2,000. Workday food and convenience spending add $3,000. The total increase in annual expenses exceeds $14,000. The salary gain is effectively neutralized. Standard advice tends to fail because it addresses individual behaviors rather than structural pressure. Suggestions like pack lunch, budget better, or cut discretionary spending assume that the person has control over the system. In reality, many of these expenses are driven by schedule constraints and expectations. Packing lunch sounds simple, but it requires time that the job structure may not allow consistently. Budgeting does not eliminate costs that are required to maintain performance and credibility in a role. Another common recommendation is to wait until income catches up. This rarely works. As income rises, expectations often rise alongside it. Better roles tend to demand more presence, responsiveness, and availability. This increases reliance on paid solutions. The gap between income and lifestyle does not automatically close, it often stabilizes at a higher level. The deeper problem is the absence of a framework that evaluates jobs as systems, not just income streams. Most people assess compensation in isolation. They do not model how a role reshapes daily life and spending patterns. Without this model, decisions are made with incomplete information. This is why many financially responsible people feel stuck despite making good career choices. The problem is not a lack of discipline or ambition. It is that the cost of maintaining the role is underestimated and normalized. Until that cost is made visible and evaluated alongside income, the same pattern will repeat with each career step. The first key mistake is evaluating career progress using salary alone. Many people assume that moving from $75,000 to $90,000 is a clear financial improvement. What is missed is that the new role often carries higher ongoing costs that scale automatically. When these costs are ignored, the comparison becomes misleading. The job looks better on paper, while the net result remains flat or even declines. The second mistake is treating lifestyle costs as personal choices rather than role-driven requirements. Expenses related to location, appearance, schedule rigidity, and convenience are often justified as individual preferences. In reality, they are frequently imposed by the structure of the job. When costs are framed as optional, they are rarely challenged. This prevents reassessment of whether the role is financially efficient. A third mistake is assuming income growth will eventually solve the problem. In practice, higher paying roles often come with higher expectations. More senior positions tend to require longer availability, faster response times, and stronger professional signaling. This increases time pressure and reliance on paid solutions. As a result, expenses rise in parallel with income. The gap between earnings and usable surplus does not widen as expected. The long-term consequences become clear when projected forward. Assume a conservative $15,000 annual lifestyle cost tied to maintaining a good job. Over 5 years, that equals $75,000. Over 10 years, $150,000. Over 20 years, $300,000. These figures represent direct cash flow impact only. They do not include investment returns that could have been generated if the money were retained. Include opportunity cost, and the numbers grow significantly. If $15,000 per year were invested at a moderate 5% annual return, the outcome changes. After 10 years, the foregone value exceeds $190,000. After 20 years, it approaches $500,000. This is not the result of aggressive investing or unusual assumptions. It is the mechanical effect of consistent leakage. To show that income is not the deciding factor, compare two simplified scenarios. Person A earns $100,000 in a role with high lifestyle maintenance costs, losing $15,000 annually to role-driven expenses. Person B earns $80,000 in a more flexible role, with only $4,000 in additional lifestyle costs. Over 10 years, person B often accumulates more investable capital despite earning less. The difference is not effort, skill, or ambition. It is structural efficiency. Another consequence is reduced optionality. High fixed lifestyle costs raise the minimum income required to maintain stability. This limits the ability to take career risks, negotiate, or step back temporarily. People stay in roles not because they are optimal, but because the cost of exiting feels too high. This creates long-term dependency on income rather than control over it. The core conclusion is that the problem is not insufficient earnings. Many people affected by this dynamic earn above average incomes. The issue is that decisions are made based on gross numbers instead of net outcomes. When lifestyle costs are allowed to expand automatically with each career step, higher income fails to translate into meaningful financial progress. The practical solution to the hidden lifestyle cost of a good job is not to abandon career growth or reduce ambition. It is to separate income from role-driven spending and to manage lifestyle as a controlled system rather than an automatic outcome. This requires introducing structure where most people rely on adaptation. The first step is to calculate the role maintenance cost. This is the annual cost required to perform and sustain a job at an expected level. It includes transportation, location-related housing premiums, workday food, professional appearance, and paid services that replace time. These numbers should be written down and reviewed annually. The goal is not precision to the dollar, but visibility. Once this cost is visible, salary can be evaluated net of role requirements rather than in isolation. The second step is to define a lifestyle ceiling. This is a maximum percentage of income that can be allocated to role-driven expenses. A practical benchmark is 15–20% of gross income. When the cost of maintaining a role exceeds this range, the system flags inefficiency. This is not a judgment about the job. It is a signal that structure, not effort, needs adjustment. The third step is structural adjustment, not behavioral restriction. Instead of trying to cut individual expenses repeatedly, the focus shifts to reducing the conditions that create them. Examples include negotiating partial remote work, adjusting work hours to reduce peak time costs, choosing housing based on commute efficiency rather than status, or standardizing professional spending categories. Each change reduces multiple costs simultaneously without increasing risk. This system works mechanically because it addresses cost drivers rather than symptoms. Removing one commute day per week reduces transportation, food, time loss, and fatigue-related spending at once. Standardizing clothing or limiting professional upgrades reduces decision fatigue and recurring expenses. These changes are durable because they do not require daily discipline. Once implemented, they operate automatically. The solution is stable because it does not depend on market performance, employer goodwill alone, or future raises. It improves cash flow by lowering recurring expenses rather than increasing income expectations. Lower fixed costs increase resilience. When income fluctuates or opportunities change, financial pressure remains manageable. Importantly, this approach does not assume immediate or drastic action. It is designed for gradual implementation. One structural change per year can materially improve net outcomes over time. The system allows for ambition while protecting financial efficiency. Over time, separating income from role-driven lifestyle reduces financial drag. Money saved through structural efficiency can be redirected to savings, investment, or flexibility. The role remains good, but it stops silently consuming the value it produces. The job becomes a tool for building wealth rather than a structure that absorbs it. When the full analysis is assembled, the pattern becomes clear. The financial mistake is not accepting a good job or aiming higher. It is allowing the role to define lifestyle costs automatically without measuring or limiting them. Income grows, but the system around it expands at the same pace. The result is movement without accumulation. The framework to avoid this outcome is straightforward and repeatable. First, treat every job as a financial system, not just a source of pay. For each role, calculate the annual cost required to maintain performance and expectations. This includes transportation, location related housing premiums, professional appearance, workday spending, and time replacement services. This number should be reviewed once per year and compared directly to salary. Second, convert gross salary into net role income. Subtract the role maintenance cost from gross pay to see what the job actually produces. This removes the illusion created by higher salaries and allows roles to be compared on equal terms. Two positions with different pay often reverse in attractiveness once this adjustment is made. Third, apply a fixed rule. Role-driven lifestyle costs should not exceed a defined share of income. A practical ceiling is 15-20%. When this threshold is crossed, the response should be structural change, not tighter budgeting. This rule prevents gradual expansion from becoming permanent drag. Fourth, prioritize changes that reduce multiple costs at once. Partial remote work, schedule flexibility, location efficiency, and standardized professional spending all reduce several expense categories simultaneously. These changes are more effective than repeated attempts to control individual line items. Now, consider the timeline. After 1 year, the impact appears in cash flow. Even modest structural changes often recover 4,000 SEK or $6,000 annually. This money is not created by sacrifice. It is retained by removing inefficiency. Financial reviews become clearer because outcomes align more closely with income. After 5 years, the effect compounds, redirecting $5,000 per year to savings or investment at moderate returns produces $30,000 or $35,000 in additional capital. More importantly, fixed lifestyle pressure is lower. Career decisions become easier because fewer expenses depend on maintaining a specific role. After 10 years, the difference is structural. Reduced lifestyle drag can preserve $70,000, $100,000, or more in net worth, depending on consistency. Optionality increases. People can adjust work intensity, change roles, or take calculated risks without destabilizing their finances. What should be done now is clear. List all role-driven expenses from the last 12 months. Calculate their annual total. Divide that number by gross income to determine the percentage. Identify one structural change that reduces this percentage within the next year. This process does not require rejecting career growth or lowering standards. It requires separating income from the cost of maintaining it. When lifestyle expansion is controlled deliberately, higher pay begins to translate into actual financial progress. The conclusion is practical. Many people with good jobs struggle not because they earn too little, but because the job consumes its own value. When that cost is measured and managed, the same income produces very different outcomes.